So thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest. And the topic of interest today is learning a little bit about engineering in the Air Force. And we've got two esteemed engineers from AFLCMC with us today. Ma'am, Ms. Janning-Lask, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and give a little bit of your career background.
You bet. So, hello, I'm Jackie Janning-Lask. I'm the Director of Air Force Lifecycle Management Center Engineering Directorate. I also act as the Chief Engineer for Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. I started my career back in the late 80s, and my goal was to see all parts of the Air Force. So I started in what used to be Aeronautical Systems Center, which is now Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. And I did a couple programs there. I went to Air Force Materiel Command because I wanted to see how the command worked. I went to another center just to see how another center worked. I went to Air Force Research Lab because I heard how great their science and technology was, and I wanted to learn how all that happened. Then I took a tour at the Pentagon, one of the best jobs I've ever had, working in SAF AQ. And that led me back to AFRL once again, and then to the position that I'm in now. So I've had a lot of varied experiences in science and technology across the Air Force, and ended up being back in engineering right now. Thanks.
And Ms. Hudson.
Hi, thanks for this opportunity. So I started my career like Ms. Janning-Lask back in the late 80s, I guess you could say. So I started as a co-op initially. So what is an intern now? So I started as a co-op student from Tuskegee University, and then I worked at ASC my entire career, which is now Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. But I did take a position over in the center, in the command rather, to learn about the strategic policy and processes that the command has. So basically my career started as electronic warfare engineer. So that's what I did as a co-op. So electronic warfare, been an avionics engineer. Right now I'm the Avionics Engineering Division Chief in the directorate, working for Ms. Janning-Lask in Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. So I have been an engineer my entire career here at Wright-Patt. So I've worked on multiple platforms, programs, all avionics, from electronic warfare to controls and displays, to integrating complex mission systems, special access programs, which was really exciting. Now in my position as a division chief and previous as a program manager in a supervisory role and as mentoring. So that has been a great experience up until now for my 30 plus years working here at the Air Force.
All right. Now, you were both in an event last week in Maryland, I believe. Ms. Janning-Lask, can you tell us a little bit about what that event was?
You bet. That was the Black Engineer of the Year Association had their annual symposium that included an opportunity for us to recruit. They had a recruiting fair. They had several award ceremonies, of which Karen Hudson received an award. I'll let her tell you about that. And then we also had a huge gala at the end of the program that highlighted all of our senior, and not so much senior, but our, for the Air Force, it was our most promising engineer. And that was outstanding because I got to introduce Kellen Barry and at the gala. And then halfway through the gala, our Secretary of Defense, Austin Lloyd, showed up. And at the end of the ceremony, I was able to connect Kellen and Secretary Austin, and it was just phenomenal. But it's an opportunity for Black engineers and industry to come together and talk about the future of engineering, some of the challenges, some of the insights, some opportunities. It's just a great forum. I've been a huge BEYA supporter almost my entire career. It's just a very energetic and exciting platform for engineers.
Okay, all right. And Ms. Hudson, why don't you tell us a little bit about the award that you won?
So I won the Outstanding Achievement Award, and the category was Modern Day Technology Leader. So that was where they recognized bright men and women in the areas of science, technology, and engineering. So just think about BEYA, it was the 37th annual BEYA event. So it's not just engineers from the Air Force or scientists or technologists in the Air Force. These are people across DoD. So all of the agencies in DoD and industry. So defense partners were there. So we're recognized at a much higher level, I thought, because you're competing with everyone. So everyone was raised to that great recognition. And at the award ceremony for the modern day technology, it was amusing just to see, the vast number of industry partners get up and announce, trying to say that their company was more premier than the other companies. So the Boeings got up and the Lockheeds got up and the Northrop Grummons. So when I got up to announce myself, I said, I am Karen Hudson, Avionics Engineering Division Chief from the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center, because they kept saying the Boeing. And I was like, okay, we have to let them know that it's the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center. So it was a great recognition, a great award. I was honored that I was nominated by Miss Janning-Lask. So that was my third BEYA event. So, and like she said, it's just an opportunity for networking, for recruiting, for mentoring, for career development, because there are K through 12 students that come through, there are college students that come through, there are even experienced engineers coming through looking for positions. So recruiting, so it gives us the opportunity to mentor and to network, and also with the career development, because it was exciting. And it's just a thrill, because it's a huge event in a massive venue, to see just that many people. And then all of the HBCUs come. So we're trying to recruit the best and the brightest to come work for the Air Force. So we are always enthused about it. So that's why Ms. Janning-Lask participates. That's why I enjoy participating as well. So it's all rewarding.
And Ms. Janning-Lask, I think you gave a presentation there as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the presentation, what your message was?
Yeah, I was about ready to interrupt and share that anyhow. So Karen and I, along with General Pringle, and we had a few other individuals from across the Air Force, talk about a day in the life of an Air Force engineer. And the way that it was broken out, General Pringle talked about research. We had Karen talk about the acquisition piece, and we had representation for sustainment. We had representation for test. And I kind of came up, I was the caboose, and I talked about all the benefits of a day in the life is more than just your 8-hour workday. So I talked about, the benefits that you have. And, with the Air Force, it's not just your career, but it's, you have a family, you have a support system, you have the EAP, you have, facilities that allow you to, exercise or have hobbies. And so it just kind of tied it all together that in the Air Force, we're really a family, and having that balance, which I call work-life integration, it really allows you to fulfill not just your professional career, but your personal life as well.
Mm-hmm. So you're both very accomplished in your fields, obviously. I want to learn a little bit about your early careers, and maybe even what prompted you to get started to become an engineer in the first place. We'll start with Ms. Hudson.
Thank you for that. Like I mentioned, I was a co-op from Tuskegee University back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth back in the mid-'80s. I like to say that to my new hires. Yeah, way before. But I was recruited by a Tuskegee University graduate, and he worked in Wright Labs, which at that time, Wright Labs was a part of ASC. Now it's Air Force Research Lab. So I interviewed, I can't remember the interview. I just knew after the interview, I had a job. Had no idea where Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. From little town, in Alabama, Tuskegee, okay, I got a job. So I'll have experience. So that was exciting to me. But if I step back, when I was in high school, I remember my freshman year in high school, and a classmate said, well, you're good in math, so you should be an engineer. I want to be a fashion designer. Why do I want to work on a train? I'm like, what is an engineer? That's all I could think about. I don't want to work on a train. Mm-hmm. So because I grew up in the backyard of Tuskegee University, when I became a sophomore, there was this, before STEM became STEM, I was a part of an organization called Southeastern Consortium for Minorities in Engineering. So like STEM now introduces, grade school kids, high school kids to science, technology, engineering, math. It allows us to expose us to engineering opportunities, So we got to go on field trips. So my first field trip as a SECME member, I remember we went to see an F-16 and we got to climb into the cockpit. And my best friend and I said, we're going to be pilots. I'm like, yeah, not knowing what all that took, but it just seemed exciting to see all these controls and displays, and you have one person in this cockpit and that person is in control, and it just seemed exciting to me. So from there, and then I came to Wright Pat, avionics, controls and displays, how the aircraft operates, it just all came around in one big circle. So that's how I started in engineering, not really knowing what it meant. But I'm happy with where I am. I wouldn't change it. The interesting thing is that I thought I would only be here 2 or 3 years because when I was in school, McDonnell Douglas, which is now Boeing, and General Dynamics, which is now Lockheed Martin, recruited heavily at our school. So every engineering week, every career fair, they came out in droves. So a lot of my classmates went to work for industry. So I said, well, I'll work here 2 or 3 years and I'll go work for industry. Then they started laying off. Yeah, I think I'll stay where I am because this is stability. I can ride this out. So after 30 plus years, I'm still here. And I don't doubt that this is where I'm supposed to be and that I made the right decision to be here.
And Ms. Janning-Lask, how did you get started?
I grew up the daughter of an inventor, and I was the youngest of 7 children. So we used to tinker in the basement. And so building things was always something that was exciting to me. And so I always knew that I wanted to be an engineer. I just didn't know what kind or what I wanted to do. And very much like Karen, when I received an offer, my very first offer was with Commonwealth Edison in Chicago, Illinois. And it was a great opportunity as a human factors engineer to work on the controls and displays of nuclear reactors. And at that time, back in the 80s, that was a critical component for the nuclear enterprise. So for nuclear reactors. So I chose to work at Wright-Patterson and closer to home, and they offered so many opportunities to further my education. And so that was the first, I think that was the first time I was like, this is what I want to do. But I will tell you that, I thought, well, I'll work here 2 or 3 years. And then it was, well, I'll work here 5 to 7 years. And then it was, well, this is kind of neat. I think I'll just learn all about the different facets of the Air Force. So I started in simulators. And I'll tell you what, just as Karen was describing her excitement of sitting in a cockpit of an F-16, I was sitting in the cockpit of a simulator of an F-16, testing it, right? And so as you're going through a test on a simulator, you're taking off, you're flying, you're landing, you're doing maneuvers, right? And before I knew it, one particular evening, we're testing this simulator and we walk out, it was, I kid you not, it was 10 o'clock at night. And we just got so focused on our work, and it was, just testing everything. I think we ended up finishing a day early because we were just so engaged with, making sure that the simulator worked and that it was appropriate, in combination with the aircraft. So that grabbed me, I think, was working in simulators. And then it just took off from there because I wanted to learn the why behind that. Right? Why do we do that? What are the issues? How can I help the warfighter? What can I do? And then my career just kind of took off from there.
So it's interesting that you both mentioned that you got the bug early on, and I think that a lot of people would agree that that's a necessary place where we need to engage. What is your message to young women specifically? I mean, I think engineering is still at least perceived to be a primarily male-dominated field. Maybe that's not true anymore. But that's kind of the perception. So what is your message to young women who are getting ready in high school, maybe to select the right classes and things like that? Ms. Hudson, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, engineering is still male dominated. I guess you could say that, which is interesting because when I was in college, there were a lot of females in the engineering school in all disciplines, electrical, mechanical, aero, and chemical. But I would say to them, stay focused. Find someone in that career field that you can ask questions. Like I said, even though the school was there, there was no one I could reach out to and say, well, what do you do in engineering? What is the job like? What should I focus? Like you said, what classes should I focus on? But I can tell you for when I started, like Jackie and I back in the late 80s, I can think now that I knew maybe 7 female engineers, Jackie being one of them. That was it. So that's really, really low. There are more women now, but I think even with it being male dominated, even with it being male dominated, I can say that none of us would shy away because we're in a male dominated career field. I think all of us are strong. We can all go toe to toe with any man based on our skill set and our abilities and our determination. So any young woman who is interested, that means they're determined, which is good. Stay focused, find a mentor to talk to, don't give up. We've all had challenges in our career. We've all had failures. It's not smooth sailing. So just look for those challenges, keep your head up and be encouraged to do it. That's why I'm interested and I'm pleased. I like to recruit women because I can identify with some of the things they're thinking about. I don't think many would shy away, but I would encourage those who are just, on the fence. Well, should I, shouldn't I? I like math. If you love math, like math, whatever, pursue it. If you love math, like science, pursue it. That's what we need. Someone who's dedicated, interested, and you want to do it because you enjoy it. So align what your passion is, and we can find something within the field for you.
And Ms. Janning-Lask?
Yeah, Karen's spot on. Focus, find a mentor. I'm going to go one step further and say find a mentor and a sponsor. So a mentor talks to you and a sponsor talks about you to other people, right? To help you grow your network. And I think it's important for other women, for instance, to help some of these young women that are getting into the field. One of the interesting things, Karen pointed out, we had colleagues in college that were female, that were in our courses. But what tends to happen is once women become childbearing age, they decide that they're going to get out of their career field, right? They're going to get out of their career. They're either going to do something that they consider easier, or they're going to stay home with the kids, right? I have to say, one of the great things about the Air Force is it allowed for me, for instance, to go part-time when my children were young. And so I didn't have to leave the career field that I loved, right? And the Air Force, I could still contribute to mission, but only work 20 hours a week. Essentially, that was when my kids were sleeping. And it allowed me to continue my career while my children were young. So Air Force Personnel Center did what they call a barrier analysis late last year. And what they found was that 70% of employees work within 19 minutes of mom. And so what we kind of teased out of that is once employees start building a family, they go back for that support system, right? And they want to be around their mom or their, some relative. And so that allowed, what we did at Wright-Patterson, for instance, was we reached out to a lot of the state of Ohio universities and we said, hey, there's a lot of engineers that are going to come back because they went to school here because they live close to mom. And, Wright-Patterson would love to take advantage of that. But the other thing is, if you don't want to move home, right, the opportunities are there to work part-time or do something different, but still contribute to the mission. And what that leads to is much more personal fulfillment, much more professional fulfillment, and it allows the diversity that's so very important in building weapon systems, right? When you have that diversity of thought or that diversity of experience. And so the Air Force allows that. I sound like a recruiting, I sound like I'm on a recruiting trip, but I can't tout, my personal experience with the Air Force enough. It's just been so rewarding, and I've been able to build so much of my life around it and absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's the family aspect that you mentioned earlier. That's kind of the whole person concept that the Air Force makes an effort really to try and help people so that they can be fulfilled personally and then allow themselves to expand professionally, So let's talk about some rewarding assignments or maybe a project or something that you worked on that you were proud of, or maybe it was something that didn't work out really well, but you learned a lot from it. Ms. Hudson, let's go with you first.
Well, as I said last week in the panel, my most challenging project was classified, so I can't tell you about that. But my most exciting part of my career, and I've had a lot of them. I worked with Jackie in the training systems SPO. I've worked on the B1. And I even did education with industry. So that's something that the Air Force offers you, not only they'll pay for you to get an advanced degree, but give you opportunities. So when I left for a year to work for NCR for a year and it was time for me to come back, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was working B1 before I left. I came back and I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. So I talked to my division chief and he said, oh, we have all these foreign military sales programs at F-16. Yeah, I'm not ready to travel there. So, which the Air Force offers you is opportunity to travel. Yep. So I called up a friend and he said, well, I've been in F-22 for 6 years. You can take my job. Okay. Mission planning. I don't know what that is. I'll do it. So I talked to, at that time, the chief avionics engineer was Mark Fraker. And he was like, okay, you can come work for us. So that was exciting. So the premier aircraft at the time in the Air Force was the F-22. So I started off as the lead mission planning engineer for the F-22. And I had my son while I was in F-22. F-22 was a demanding job. I mean, anybody who has worked that can tell you that was a demanding job, but it was fun because even now I have a sense of pride every time I hear or see the F-22. It's just, oh my gosh, I worked on that platform. And that's what the Air Force gives you, a sense of pride and accomplishment for anything you do because you work on a platform and you work to completion on something, sometimes not, but when you work to completion and a system is deployed and it's demonstrated and it does what you wanted it to do, you just feel like that's mine. So a sense of ownership, a sense of pride. So my 6 years there, I had my son. And I said, every time the F-22 came to the area, came to Wright Pad, my son knew all about F-22. He would recognize it in any movie. So he knew all about Starscream and Transformers. He knew about, every time the F-22 was in, Mom, that's an F-22. Yes, yes, yes. So that was an exciting part of my life. But my most rewarding, I must say, is my current assignment as a division chief. When I became a branch chief 5 years ago, whatever it was, that was my first supervisory position. So I'd never been a supervisor, just along the technical track. So with engineering, you can be all technical, or you can be management, or you can switch between the two. You can do that. So when I was approached to apply, I was like, well, I've never been a supervisor. I don't know how this is going to work. But I guess I've kind of relished in the position now, and I'm doing pretty well. So from that on to a division chief, but people told me when I came to become a branch chief, you need to chart your course out. Don't stay there. Only stay there for a few years. Don't stay in the home office, get back in the program office. But I say it's rewarding because I get to touch people and encourage and mentor them. So I had one Palace Acquire actually call me out in his acknowledgement in his thesis. Now that's when I realized you never know when you really inspire someone. until they tell you. So you just assume that you're making a difference. Oh, I did a good job. I did a good job. But when someone actually tells you that, it's really heartwarming. So when he called me out and said the kind words that he did, I'm like, oh my gosh, he put it in his thesis. It's in writing. It's there forever.
Yeah.
And I had another PAC come to me when I was a branch chief, and he says, Miss Hudson, I want your job. I was like, what do you mean you want my job? I was like, you can stay on the technical track and be a technical expert in an area or manage. He's like, I know that, but you always seem happy. I was like, well, you never see me cry. That's why. I was like, oh, he said, no, I want to be a branch chief. I want to do what you do. So that's encouraging. So I would say I'm happy because I think it's rewarding because I can make a difference. And I think I'm making a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ms. Janning-Lask?
Yeah, she is definitely making a difference. I can attest to that. So for me, I would say that several years ago, we started to put together what we called the cyber campaign. And it's when we really decided we were going to put an initiative together to ensure or assure this cyber secure and cyber safe environment. And the neat part about it was you had a lot of people that were coming together that volunteered, right? It wasn't an assignment. It was more of a, we'd like for you to think about this and work with the team and rally around this mission and find out what we need to do. And I think it's the spirit of that service and mission that got me excited, because here I was with a bunch of people that wanted to be there, that wanted to drive change. And it was very exciting at the time. I got to meet a lot of senior people. I got to learn how to build a program from the ground up that focused on not only mission, but everything that surrounds that, right? Cost, schedule, performance, resources, arranging all this, putting together a submission for the POM and working with general officers. And so that, I truly made some of my best friends that I still have today working through that campaign. And it gave me the skills that I needed to start what I started working on several years ago, which was the digital campaign, right? So the Air Force is becoming more digital. How do we do that across the enterprise, and how do we do it quickly? So that was probably, I think, my most fulfilling, because I got a lot of personal fulfillment out of it, a lot of great friends that are dear to my heart today, and was a significant part of the mission that still exists today.
And so that's something else I wanted to ask you about. So what do you see coming in the future? And Ms. Janning-Lask, what?
You bet. Yeah. So I'm very excited about the opportunities for artificial intelligence and machine learning. So those two things together. I'm also excited about quantum. I think that things like artificial intelligence that will allow us to move quickly in decision making, and the data that's supplied for that, quick decision making will. I think that will just breed so much technology for the future. Machine learning and additive manufacturing has already proven what it can do in the aerospace and defense community. And so I just, sometimes at night, I'll just lay there and think about, wow, this, we could do this in space, right? And it's this additive piece, and with the artificial intelligence and the technology with quantum is moving quicker now, right? I mean, it was slowly, and now it's starting to move a lot faster. And I've always said it's all in the data, right? Data is going to be the one thing that changes. And so when you think of artificial intelligence, it's using that data to make decisions quicker. The data and additive manufacturing, what can we do, right? In terms of using data to make changes to our weapon systems faster, for instance. And then quantum allows us to do and secure communications and other areas that will take our Air Force further faster.
Yeah. And Ms. Hudson, what do you see coming in the future?
Well, I would say, since I have an amazing division of exceptional engineers. And I always say, I really think it's about enjoying what you do and enjoying the people you work with. So I enjoy the people I work with and the people I work for. Wink, wink. So I think other than retirement, but with all of the things that Ms. Janning-Lask just said, with the technologies, the cutting edge technologies that are in the forefront, I see myself remaining and continuing to bring in those bright engineers, because it's just, they are so energetic and willing to learn and enthusiastic about the future and wanting to be here. So giving them hands-on activities, helping them interface, not just within the center, but with AFRL, to actually see technology, even having some rotation around hands-on and program offices so they can get a wide perspective of what we do in the Air Force. I've even had some of my young engineers go out and do some compass call testing. So hands-on testing, so they can get an understanding of what the acquisition does and what the testing does. So I think it was like, it's a 6-week tour, essentially. And we send them out every year. So that exposure. So I just want to keep exposing, recruiting, and mentoring and training engineers to have extensive Air Force careers like we have now. We want to keep them. We don't want them to go over to industry. So as long as we keep them motivated, that's what I see myself doing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you got to prepare the next generation, right? You know, and you got to challenge them intellectually to keep them interested in the jobs, you know, so, and to compete with industry. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our time. But before we go, I just want to see if there's anything that I forgot to ask you about, or anything that you'd like to add. And Ms. Janning-Lask, we'll go with you first.
Sure. I think you've covered the gamut of at least my career and what my focus is. And I just want to foot stomp for anybody that's watching this. You know, if you have any questions, or you're considering the Air Force or you're not, right? Look at it. And if you have questions, well, do I want to leave? Do I want to stay? Take your time and know that, one of the things that I've always told myself after a certain point is you're in it for the long haul, and mission first. And it's just the satisfaction you get when you can save a warfighter's life or make it easier for them, right? And they come up and they thank you at a meeting and say, that capability just changed the way our operations work. Thank you for that. And it's very fulfilling. Yeah. So I think I'd end with that.
And Ms. Hudson?
Well, I would say I would have never imagined that I would have started my career as an avionics engineer, and then I've come full circle to manage the division for avionics. But to anyone out there, I would say, don't think you can't do it. And if you have questions, don't try to figure it out on your own. There are just so many people, vast majority of people that have different backgrounds, experiences, insight. And like Ms. Janning-Lask said, find a mentor. You don't need just one. You can find multiple mentors. I have multiple mentors. I have multiple sponsors. And I always say, the sponsor and the mentor, my definition is the mentor is the person that will give you the advice, help guide you. The mentor is the sponsor is the person that will pick up the phone and would recommend you, because that person knows your capability, your qualification, your skill set, and would recommend you for a position because they admire you and they believe in you. So perform at your best, do your best, so that you can have a sponsor and have multiple mentors. And they don't have to always be in your career field. Find someone in your career field and someone outside of your career field so you can balance that advice.
So again, thanks for joining us on Leadership Log today. Really appreciate you helping us understand a little bit better about engineering and sponsors and mentors, which is all really helpful information. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.